Hey, what's up? This is Zach here at the Austin Media House in Consensus with Alex from Koii, GM. How are you doing today?
GM, pretty good. It's very hot.
It is hot. Yeah, actually, it's really hot. And there was a storm last night. It's been crazy. Congratulations on 72,000 nodes.
73,000.
73,
700 overnight last night.
700 overnight. Congratulations. Before we kind of just jump into this interview and get into the hackathons and the different initiatives that Koii is rocking right now, can you talk a little bit about like how you think it's going, like how you got to this point?
It seems like it's going really well. We were at 1,000 nodes right before Christmas, and we're now at 73,000. It's only been 4 months, so it's pretty spectacular. The really exciting thing about this is that means that there's 73,000 devices out there that you can pay with any token. So we have bridging going online in a couple of weeks, and that means that any token from any network will be able to bridge onto Koii and reward node operators directly. And Koii is just kind of the gas fee payer here, so we take tiny transaction fees on all of this, but just to make sure that everybody can connect directly with this node audience, and the node operators love it. There's even one task where there's 11,000 people that are running the task, and they're not even getting tokens yet as a reward. They're just aping into everything that comes out, which is really exciting.
That's how you know the real dedication is there, because they're in it for the actual experience, even with no immediate reward.
Yeah, and people seem to love it, and the Discord's full of people raving about it, which is super fun.
Let's go. Okay, this is actually the first consensus they're having a hackathon this year. We had EZA here yesterday, who's the team putting on that hackathon. I know Koii is going to be doing a ton of hackathons. Can you tell us a little bit about the vision for that and what you have planned?
So most people don't know this, but we earmarked 50% of the supply just for developers, because I'm a developer myself, and we wanted to make it really easy for everybody to get involved. And again, the whole point is that we want the node operators to get as many opportunities as they can, and that means getting as many amazing developers in to launch tokens and get them out to those node operators. So the way we see this is decentralization only happens if we have a lot of people participating. And Koii is here to actually bridge that gap. And so we're going around the world educating people. We've got a hackathon coming up in London in a couple of weeks. We've got one coming up in SF. We're going to be having them pretty much in every major hub for Web3 development. And the goal is that we can onboard people, teach them how to use these tools, and hopefully take somebody from 0 to 100 in like a couple of weeks instead of like a couple of months or a couple of years.
So, I mean, that's really cool that you're a developer yourself. I think that's going to allow you to tailor the experience to be more developer friendly. How do you like, what is that experience like for someone who's coming into the ecosystem, whether at a hackathon, like you mentioned, San Francisco upcoming in London? Like what will that be like?
So we released this thing called the Easy Sandbox. I spent a while running a crypto school, as you know, in Chicago. One of the things we noticed there is people have a hard time getting their head around Web3 because decentralization means you have to all these checks and balances to make sure everything's working perfectly. And so what we've done instead is we made all of these templates. So you don't have to start from scratch. You just grab one of these templates. We got them for file storage, for databases, search engines. If you want to make a web crawler, if you want to make a little AI, all these things are in a box. You take the box and you deploy your own token on top of it, and you send it out to all these Koii nodes to run the script. So we call this the Easy Sandbox, EZ Sandbox. And you can just pop in there, you take one of these lessons, and you run with it. And we've added a whole bunch of academic content to make it really easy to understand.
Why do you think someone would want to develop on Koii?
My main goal with this is to make it easier for people to actually build their company without having to go and get a ton of VC funding. So if you know a lot of indie hackers, a lot of the time they want to get something started and try it out without having to go and like raise a lot of money first, because most hackers are not finance people, so that's not their natural skill set. They don't want to go and stand around at networking events and trying to meet VCs. They'd rather actually sit down and just start writing code. And so with Koii, what we're trying to make is a system where you can launch your token right to the node operator out of the box. And so you take one of these templates, you add your own spice to it, and then you can issue a token. And you don't have to talk to anybody else. You can just do it by yourself, which turns any developer into a superstar. Especially now with ChatGPT and tools like this, anybody can sit down and really hack. And so you can take an individual and turn them into an absolute rock star and even possibly launch a company solo, which is pretty spectacular.
That is spectacular. Can you extrapolate on that a bit? Like where do you see this going? Like what would be your ideal sort of outcome from these hackathons? If, I mean, that's if they're going to build, what are they going to build? What would you like to see?
So we've seen a lot of people over the years that have talked about how Web3 is going to change the world. How we're going to have a decentralized internet that runs peer-to-peer between all our devices, how we won't have to give all our data to Google and Apple, how we can actually like take control of the internet. And I think what we've seen is actually the opposite. So if you look at like OpenAI or like now with Google's attempts at what they're doing with AI, it seems like there's a lot of problems and it's all very centralized. And so the big companies who have all the data, they're the ones that are going to own the future right now. And that's a big problem. And so what we really want here is we want the individuals who are actually willing to go and build a product to be able to serve a community without having to go and make a deal with some big tech company.
Make a deal with the devil, so to speak.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to make a deal with the devil. That's the whole point of Web3 and decentralization is if we believe in it as a community, it should happen. And that's what we're trying to make happen. It makes it a lot easier.
No, I completely agree. I think that is the ethos that gets a lot of people into this space is like we can build ourselves and we can own our own data. Why do you think that like the adoption has continued to rise, like the nodes, these different things, and do you think there's like a timing thing to it? Like why is DePIN so hot now?
So I think every time we see a bull cycle, you get everybody clamoring to join all the airdrops. They want to get all these free tokens. And unfortunately, a lot of the time with airdrops, you're trying to chase after like a community thing. So you have to go and like, shill something on social media to get the airdrop. With Koii, we've made it a lot simpler. Now what you do is you run this computer script while you're sleeping. And it's really easy. It takes like 5 minutes to install. My grandmother did it in like 15. Really simple, right? You run this while you're sleeping and you join a community. And you don't have to shill it on social media. You just join the community and you give them your computer because there's some developer out there who needs that computer for a little while to help build their dream. And so you can do this. Anybody can do it. It takes no time at all, and it runs on pretty much any computer. And so I think the reason that this has been growing so fast right now is people are starting to have a good experience with it, and so they're telling a friend. And if each person who joins Koii tells one friend, it grows really fast. And if each person tells two friends, it grows absolutely exponential. And I think that's what we're starting to see now. The node count just jumps up overnight, and it's pretty spectacular to see. And we're also seeing a lot of people who came in January and had like maybe not the best experience because we were in early beta. A lot of those people are now coming back because they're hearing that things are working better. They're getting the emails. They're trying it out. And I think the cool thing is every time that we see a new project launch on Koii, that's more opportunities for people to actually try these new projects, join more communities, and so that brings more of those people back in and gets them to keep their node online every day instead of maybe once a week.
That's incredible. And at these different hackathons, I'm sure there's gonna be lots of different kinds of projects. Is there any? And we've talked to Modi. Is there different projects that you're really like that you would like to see being built?
So we have some cool ones. One of the things that we're really excited about is bridging Web2 and Web3 social right now, because there's a lot of opportunities for AI to do really specific things there. A lot of people are talking about general purpose AIs. I think it tends to work better. And I used to work on AI back before I even got into Web3, actually. Um, and a lot of the AIs that are coming out now are trying to be general purpose. And competing with Google or with OpenAI to be a general purpose AI is actually very hard. But if you can make something really specific, like a new news feed, a new ad engine, maybe some kind of a tool that helps you connect with friends, those kinds of like really specific use cases can really change the world. And so what we're seeing now is we're trying to connect the Web2 social world to the Web3 social world. And so if we can start getting all these people to run nodes, their node can actually bridge data in from Twitter and Reddit and pull it into Warpcast and these other platforms. And that's going to be really exciting, I think.
I agree. I mean, I guess, how does that sort of work?
So the Koii node itself, it's running on your computer. So
Yeah.
it has access to everything you have access to, but you control what it does. And so it's all private, it's all running locally, but it can do anything that you can do. And so if you have access to Twitter, if you have access to Reddit, if you have access to Facebook, then your node has access to those platforms. And you can choose to take your Twitter newsfeed and port it over into Warpcast so other people can view it outside of Twitter. What that does is very interesting. So it disintermediates the ad ecosystem. So rather than seeing Twitter ads, now they're seeing ads on a new social platform. So Modi's going to be launching some products like that in the next little while, which is pretty exciting. We have a whole bunch of hackathons kind of tailored around this idea. The other big one that we've started trying to put some effort behind is gaming. So there's some cool ways you can
Let's
do
go.
gaming lobbies. So you could have like a poker game that's actually just you and your friends hosting the app. And so you can have a poker game where you never actually have to connect to a third party. And it's just you and your friends with your computers hosting the game. And the table appears on your web browser, but it's actually just you guys keeping it fair. And if anybody does anything unfair, then the system detects that immediately, so you can't like stack the deck with aces, right? So it kind of creates a fair and open space in the digital world.
I really like that. Where do you see this sort of adoption happening? Like, is it globally? I mean, I've looked at the Node Explorer, so I have an idea, of course, but the US, Vietnam, there's other places. Can you maybe explain why maybe you see these certain areas or where you're continuing to see adoption or want to see adoption? And the reason I asked this is because you mentioned there's going to be a hackathon in London and San Francisco, so just kind of like why those areas and sort of, where do you want to see adoption go?
So the big hubs tend to be where the developers flock to. So really talented developers from around the world tend to go to the big city centers so they can try to meet people and like have great ideas. We're focusing on those places first, but we do plan to have hackathons all over the world. And we're hiring for DevRel in all these countries as well. Um, the Koii nodes are actually the kind of most decentralized thing I've ever seen. The only country that we don't have anybody in right now is Greenland. The exciting thing here, I think, is we're trying to empower the node operators to build their own communities. And so there's a few people in different countries. There's one guy in Vietnam that's got thousands of referrals. So he's been going on all these message boards and he's just sharing his referral code and getting all these people on board. And that's what we like to see because that means that A, he's getting rewarded for doing the marketing. So we're not paying for Google Ads and it's actually going to the community member. But B, he's actually finding the people he thinks are going to care about it the most and bringing them in. So we're building this strong core of the community that will last for a long time. And I think that's a really important part because it means the community is actually connected in a local way that I'm not even aware of. And actually at Koii, we might not even be able to actually identify these people or talk to them, but they're actually out there connecting each other and actually getting to know each other.
No, I think that's awesome. Like the localization, you can imagine like different languages being talked about and about Koi, talked about in different languages and these different things. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it is really cool to think about people evangelizing it to their friends. And I do agree that makes it more sticky because if they don't understand something, they can just, what's going on here? How do I fix this? And I think that's also a large part of why Koi has been so successful is because the community is there for each other, very much so, and very active.
Well, because we can't possibly provide support in that many languages. We're talking about that like hundreds of languages all over the world, right? We can't actually be there for every single person. But if they've got a friend that invited them, then that person can help explain things, and things seem to kind of like trickle out through the network, which is pretty cool. There's this idea that we've had for a while called global to local, which where I'm from in rural Canada. What we see there, rural, yeah, it's kind of out there.
Yeah.
It was more rural when I was growing up. I remember when we got our first Walmart, so that was
Oh,
pretty
wow.
exciting. And then we
Okay.
got Costco, and everybody stopped going to Walmart.
It's. Do you mind me saying where you're from?
Yeah, Halifax.
Halifax. Okay.
No, we love talking about Halifax. We've actually
Okay.
got a bit of a Web3 hub happening in Halifax now, so we're pretty excited about that. I know you just hired a guy from across the bay in Dartmouth, so that's pretty cool. Um, the thing we've started noticing though is this idea of global to local actually appeals to everyone who's like not in California. And nothing against people from California, but when I order a pizza in Halifax, we order it through Uber Eats. And so that means like 10 or 20% goes to Uber. And the pizza delivery driver gets paid less because that money has to come out of his pocket and go to pay somebody who made an app, right? And the same thing's true if I book an Airbnb, right? The host gets paid, but also a service fee comes out. And this is true now across so many different industries, including like advertising. Like local newspapers around the world are going bankrupt because they don't have the ad revenue because it's going to Google. And this is a huge problem now because technology tends to centralize. You only need one technology platform to do a certain thing. But when you have a protocol, you don't necessarily need a platform anymore. If you have a protocol and you have enough decentralized nodes, you can host that protocol onto all of those devices. And that means that the revenue gets shared back to the community where that's being hosted. And so you can actually kind of start to move the economics back to actually paying back to the local communities instead of actually paying back to the global conglomerate.
So the implications of this are huge because it essentially allows people to fund and participate things that they believe in more directly.
At a local level as well, yeah. So you can imagine like a social platform like this working really well. Right now, Facebook's a global platform, and they own Instagram, they own WhatsApp, they've got all of these different tendrils into our social communities. And we use them to connect because it's the only way to connect with all of the people that we want to talk to. Whereas if you have a protocol, you can still connect to all those people, but when you're connecting locally, it's actually hosted locally and it's paying back to the local community. And a developer who's in your local area can customize it for your region and for your language or your culture, or like how you actually want to connect with people. I think that's really important. That's kind of what we want to see, right?
Yeah, no, I mean that's what I think we believe in Web3. I want to get into like a more fun topic if you want to
Sure.
get not more
I thought
fun,
that was
but
pretty fun. I don't
that was fun. No, but I just mean a little more creative, like the airdrops. Okay, like
Yeah.
obviously this is super exciting for people. That is fun. No, I didn't mean like that. I just mean it's meme season here, and I mean, working with you guys, it's been really cool to see the technology behind the node and the ability to interface with so many different chains and communities, and that is really you know, I don't think many other platforms can do anything even close to that. So, you want to talk about how the interoperability is going to make like these hackathons and these different things even more exciting?
Yeah, so the thing that's really hard here, and this is the thing that I think Koii does differently than everyone else in the industry, it's very, very hard to make use of individual laptops and computers. And in our white paper, you can read about how we do this specifically, but it comes down to a lot of very deep tech that we spent the last few years developing, and even before that, a lot of our team were working on this idea. And because of this ability to include all of these smaller localized devices, we're able to accelerate how you participate. And that means that if you want to mine a new token, like a new meme coin comes out, you can participate at a very local level and actually contribute value. And so we've started seeing this lately. We have a DEX coming out on Koii in a couple of weeks. And on top of that, we've now got a bunch of people starting to issue meme coins, which I'm kind of excited about. It's a good side effect of hackathons, and it's a good side effect of showing kind of developer adoption. What it mostly means, though, is that there's a big potential to come in and, run something in the background on your computer and then have it go viral. And, that token that you started mining first is now going crazy, and everybody's trying to stake more of it, so it actually trades up on the DEX, and you can kind of like leverage into these like crazy meme trading things, which it's a little bit more degen than what I usually like to play with, but I think it's been attracting a good crowd. It seems really fun. We've also been doing some airdrops for other communities. So, we picked a couple of our favorite meme coins and some other like kind of compute projects and things like that. And if you run a coin node, we periodically will give you some of those tokens too as a bonus, because Koi's not trading yet. So we want to give you something that's liquid. One of the cool things about Koii as well is almost our entire team can write software. So even like our BD guys and our marketing team, a lot of them are actually former engineers or have still some like hobbyist kind of practices in engineering. And it means that we get really good granular feedback. And also when we talk to people and we onboard them onto the community as developers, we're actually really focused on making sure they have the best experience possible. Because ultimately that's what really matters. If you have the best developer experience, then people will continue to build on the platform. Because really this is a tool, just like a hammer, right? And if it's not ergonomic for people, then there's no point in using it.
I agree. How are you attracting people like to these different hackathons? Like, do you have different partners? Are you just finding people in London, San Francisco, or how are you like sort of what's the plan for that?
So we're definitely working with local communities as much as we can.
Yeah.
We're trying to find the local hacker groups and try to invite as many of them as we actually can find. In London, we're working with the Digital Commonwealth Group, who are pretty great. And they've, because of their kind of like hub status in London, have now been able to invite a bunch of the other local hackathon groups in London to come and participate. So that one's going to be pretty fun. We're just finalizing details on that now, but hopefully we'll announce it next week. And we'll
Did you say June 3rd is the first one?
June 13th.
13th. I was like, man,
a weeks away.
I was like,
Weeks away.
this is next week.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's super cool, and the pace is absolutely insane that you guys are moving at. I guess sort of where do you see the future of DePIN going? Like, do you think it's just something that's sort of getting established in Web3 and there's going to be some leaders and, like, I guess just how do you see the DePIN space right now in Web3?
So DePIN's a weird topic to me. I was in it way before it was called DePIN. In 2015, I launched a mesh Wi-Fi grid. And that was my first kind of foray into decentralization, but that was even before blockchain really got popular. So part of the reason I got interested in blockchain was because it allows you to coordinate DePIN better. The thing we have been seeing lately, though, is a lot of people are selling really complicated hardware. And as we saw with like the first generation of the helium miners, for example, often the first generation of hardware doesn't work that well. And then you have a lot of bugs, and there's a lot of really significant costs. So I'm always wary of buying custom hardware, unless it's been very specifically tested even prior to the hardware launch. And what we're more focused on now is trying to take hardware people already have and then make better use of it. So your phone actually has a lot of sensors in it that you can use for a whole variety of things. There's one guy in London actually that we've been talking to who's trying to use Wi-Fi routers to check barometric pressure, because the Wi-Fi signal between your router and your phone actually has latency. And depending on how much moisture there is in the air and what the pressure of the air is and things like that, you can track the latency changes. And so there's some kind of cool things like that that you can do with existing hardware, which is a huge potential. The other side of it, where I think we can see a lot of kind of interesting adoption strategies, is around taking things that people already might have as businesses and then making use of those. So my original mesh Wi-Fi grid, all we did was we went and worked with people who already had a Wi-Fi router in a business, and then we helped them upgrade that to be able to provide services that were like kind of a part of a global grid, and they could push ads onto the network and things like that. So it seems like that's where the really big value is, to be able to capture existing hardware out there. The other side of it, of course, is that all of these like newer phones, newer laptops, they're all coming out with AI chips on board. And so that means there's a lot of AI processing out there that's latent. We saw kind of what happened with IONET and some of these other networks lately, where like the node counts are difficult to keep track of, and we're not exactly sure how much hardware there really is or how much hardware there is like committed or on the edge. What we know for sure is people who go and buy a new phone want to make some money off that phone.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Same thing for laptops.
just look at the Solana phone or some of the others. No, I mean, and just the idea of being able to use your device to make money, I think is super cool. I mean, in a way, it's like, it's almost like people who rent out their own car, their own Airbnb, like,
Right.
you're renting out your compute, your storage. And I think, like you said, our phones are super highly powerful devices. It's not just for calling and texting. They can do a million things, and most of the time they're not being utilized fully. So
Exactly.
that's really interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, we like to think that you have a few different areas where you can create value with your existing hardware. So bandwidth is a big one. Most people have like fiber op at home now. So your fiber optic cable is actually very, very strong bandwidth. Like you're basically a data center in your house, and you just need to connect a computer to that and then provide hosting. So that alone is really powerful. If you have a bunch of accounts on different websites, you have rate limits on each of those websites, and you might be only able to view 50,000 tweets a day. But if you can view 50,000 tweets a day, that's 50,000 tweets that you can provide to some project that's building an LLM. And if you're donating them, it's kind of a gray area with the terms and conditions. So there's some interesting things that happen. We also noticed storage is a big one, and then compute capacity is a little bit less on hardware, like on home devices, but the compute capacity that you have there can be used for a whole bunch of things. So it's still pretty powerful. And if you have a gaming PC or something like that, then you probably have a pretty big GPU and you can do really good AI.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree, and I think that's the demand is just going to increase as AI gets big. People are realizing the sort of demand, I think, and I mean, ChatGPT is just the beginning. All the different computation that's going to be needed, the amount of GPUs. I mean, that's why NVIDIA is skyrocketing right now.
But even if you look at NVIDIA, they can only
Yeah,
make so many more GPUs,
true.
right? So this actually happened a few years ago with video calling on the rise around COVID. There's actually a shortage of GPU hardware because they had to do so much more graphics processing to process all these video calls. And they expanded the supply chain a bit for that, but not enough. And so there were always shortages. And I think what we'll see with AI on the rise is that as more and more projects come out that are harnessing more and more of this, and they take in all of this investment money, that has to get spent on hardware somewhere. And so that hardware and that capacity in the data centers and the bandwidth in and out of the data centers, all of that's a pinch point. And so decentralization really fixes a lot of these problems. And you can't build data centers very quickly. I mean, you can build them, but it takes a while. And so there's always going to be a lagging factor there where there's a lot of low cost consumer hardware that can fill the gap.
I agree, and I mean, I think there'll always be a need for it. I also think it could be interesting for devices that are not being used like as a primary device anymore. Like instead of just like recycling a phone or something,
Exactly.
you could just have it being used as a node. You probably save a lot of waste in that way. I know. I mean, I think the possibilities are really interesting. Sort of, what are you most excited about in terms of everything that you guys are building or you're seeing in the ecosystem right now?
I think the ultimate thing to me has always been this idea that digital technology is it's very fluid. So we can click delete on a database, and then the information's gone forever. And so if Twitter or Reddit deletes something, it's really gone. There's no record anywhere. The same is true on
That's
Facebook.
crazy.
Right? It's really really gone. And so as we see AI coming out
That's
more as a
actually
way to power source of
terrifying.
information, then there's this problem where we aren't really sure if things are getting deleted. And that's absolutely jarring for the political process. In the UK, just recently, they moved the election up by like I think 5 weeks or something. Or no, sorry, they moved it up by 4 months. They have this rule where you can change the date of the election, and they only have to give you 5 weeks of heads up. So there's a lot of these situations where like political maneuvering does result in like major societal upheaval. And as things get a little bit more tense, we're seeing a lot of inflation. There's a lot of like global conflict on the rise. There's a very good chance that we'll start to see things getting deleted. And the chance that we have with all this digital technology is we can actually archive everything if we have enough computers. And we just have to find a way to make it profitable. But like just as I was on my way in for this interview, actually, I ran into somebody who's doing trading signals. And they want to keep archives of Twitter and Reddit and all this stuff because it's useful for financial data. And so there's a lot of people out there who are incentivized to keep all of this information. And what we should see happening, I think, if this goes well, is we should see secondary database copies of most of these major social networks. And that'll actually give us another copy of history, which is really, really powerful. And we can do that in a cost effective and economically viable way.
I mean, I think that's really important. It also stops a lot of like censorship and like sort of uh I guess you could say, power all going into one person's hands, because it's much easier to do that if you can just delete things that you don't like.
Right. We're just getting banned from like Twitter or something, right?
Yeah, true.
I said something that Twitter didn't like recently, and I got kicked off of Twitter. And it wasn't even really like, it wasn't anything particularly dangerous. All I said was that, you know, you can crawl Twitter using your Koii node, which I think is relatively fair. I don't even really see it as a breach of the terms and conditions, but Twitter didn't like that. And so I lost my 70,000 followers that I've been building up for 10 years. And they're gone now. And I can't get those followers back. And I think deplatforming is going to probably continue to happen. I think actually when they acquired, or when Elon and co acquired Twitter, one of the main things they said was, we're not going to deplatform people. And then they kept shadow banning people. And it's just different people that they're shadow banning now. And so you could see this happening. Reddit is now kind of in the process of, you know, trying to find someone who wants to buy all their data. And so if they need to make a deal with certain advertisers, some people are going to get deplatformed. It happened on YouTube. It'll happen on Reddit. It happened on Twitter. And I think depending on the region that you're in, and, you know, what their relationship is with the US, you could see this even more. So the global to local thing really matters for the kind of process of free speech and how we actually interact online.
No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think that it is unfortunate that it's not more open to crypto, and that there has been things like that. I mean, we for a while had lost our gold check mark. We got it back, but because we were just talking about crypto,
Right.
and it was like, what do we do? It's like, oh, well, we can't really tell you what you did. And we're like, well,
Which at the same time, like, we have a Bitcoin ETF. There's going to be an Ethereum ETF. Like, Bitcoin is mainstream now.
yeah,
How can it be wrong to talk about crypto? That doesn't make any sense. Like, you shouldn't lose a gold check mark for that.
right. And the weird thing is, like, they can't actually tell you what you said or not, and then they just kind
And they
of,
won't. And they don't even answer the phone. Like, we've
yeah,
been trying to contact Twitter about this stuff for months, and they won't even answer our emails.
yeah.
And we used to pay them for advertising too. Like, we used to pay them a lot for advertising. We were a customer, and they still kicked us off.
Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and you got to wonder, what are the motives behind that? You know,
I
like,
think controlling API fees and getting more ad revenue probably, but
yeah.
sure.
Fucking bastards.
again,
Elon, come on, man. No, I'm just kidding.
tying this back to the decentralization
Yeah.
thing though, most of these companies have a very high fixed cost, right? So Snapchat
Yeah.
spends billions of dollars a year on their hardware to actually be able to serve all the videos and everything. If you move that to a decentralized cloud and it's community operated, then there's a very kind of significant shift in the dynamics, because no longer are they trying to collect ad revenue so that they can pay for this hosting cost. Instead, people are actually hosting the content as the community, and so you don't really have that ability to censor people, and you don't really need to as much either, because you're not trying to cover that cost. The community is just doing that for the token. The token economics can work out very nicely there. So yeah, we're very excited to see a lot of these kinds of projects come out of the hackathons that we're doing, and we've built a lot of the core fundamental tech. So now it's not like you have to go and build a decentralized social network from scratch, which, you know, that might be 500,000 lines of code. You just take something like IPFS and you pin it onto something like a REST API, and then you put that all onto a Koii node, and then you get 50,000 of those nodes, and now you've got a really big hosting network that can support a lot of people as customers and actual users.
I mean, I think it's a really cool way to be able to grow new businesses, honestly. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are going to take advantage, and already are taking advantage of the opportunities that didn't even exist a couple of years ago because of this technology. So it's really cool that you're building it. I guess just kind of because the mainnet is coming up, the token's coming out. Can you talk a little bit about like plans for the token and what that's going to look like over the next couple of months?
Yeah, so the token launch is it's an initial public sale, and then we're going to be listing on an exchange. I can't talk about either of those things because we're announcing them like
Of
next week.
course, yeah.
But there's going to be a public sale, so we'll let the community come in and buy it at a very low price. We're trying to include as many people as we can in this because we want the community to actually get to ride it up.
I'm going to be buying some. I already have some, but I'll be buying some for sure.
There's going to be more. And then the listings after that, we're going to try to do about one listing a month to onboard more and more communities and try to spread it around to the different Web3 ecosystems. After that, then the exciting thing is, once the token is liquid, we can support even more hackathons. And so as the investor community comes on board and can actually participate in Koii, that means that we can take that funding and we can actually sell some of these Koii tokens to go and grow the ecosystem and find more usage for these nodes. So the whole thing accelerates even more at that point, actually. So if it seems like it's going fast right now, it's about to go a lot faster.
Let's go. Well, I'm glad to be here for the journey. I think we'll wrap it there. Any closing thoughts? Oh, I guess just because we can edit this part, but we want Consensus to retweet us. So I always ask about Consensus so that they'll retweet all our videos. How's Consensus been for you this year? Like, why did you want to come, and how's the event been?
Consensus is always great. I have noticed a lot more developer action this year.
First
It seems like it's
hackathon this
growing a
year.
lot faster.
It's the
Not
first
not only
hackathon.
the consensus hackathon too, but there's a bunch of hacker houses. So there's
Oh, awesome.
the Dabble Club from San Francisco has a llama hacker house, and so you
Are
can
there
go and
llamas
hang out
there?
with actual llamas. Yeah, so there's some pretty cool stuff like that. They really brought a Texas feel to it. Big shout out to Colin and his team. Colin, if you're watching this, hello. Really nice to see that kind of stuff happening, though. I think Consensus was traditionally like a very finance-oriented conference, and now it's quickly becoming more of a techie, like developer-oriented thing. And so that's great to see because I think that represents a shift in how the ecosystem is behaving. You know, we used to be a very speculative world with crypto, and now things are moving more towards actually getting our hands dirty and actually building things. And that's what we want to see. I mean, that's what we're trying to do at Koii, and I think that's what Consensus is now realizing. And I'm starting to feel more like an Eat Denver vibe here, which is cool.
I completely agree. Like the whole hackathon and everything is completely contributing to that. I agree. There's been more builders, hackers this year than ever before. And I think Consensus does an amazing job, and we're super glad to be media partners with them for the second year. I guess just if you were to tell different developers or folks who are thinking about coming to Consensus this year or in the future, what would you tell them? Like, what should they know, you know, coming in?
Austin's very warm.
Yeah, that's a
Buy
good
yourself
tip.
some nice lightweight clothing if you can.
Nice. Yeah.
White t-shirts are dangerous. You guys got some white t-shirts, but I
Yeah.
guess it's good for the sun.
Yeah.
And definitely try to make lots of friends because Texas is a very friendly place. So you can always kind of bump into people. It's one of these events where I think there's a ton of kind of side events at this one, and usually you can just sort of walk into them. So you sort of just go look through all the Luma events and then just find your way into something and say hi to as many people as you can.
Awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you so much, Alex, and thank you so much, Consensus. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Genzio.
Cheers.